Self-Care Day, which actually is today if you didn't know. And this is a wrap up of our education and content on self-care. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure everyone's muted because I just hear a few echoes. So if you can just make sure as you are coming in, you all should be muted. Okay, perfect. I think I did that. All right. Family Caregivers of BC. So we are a nonprofit charity dedicated 100% to the well-being of family caregivers. We have served caregivers across BC since 2010, so we've almost 34 years now, and are part of the Ministry of Health Patients as Partners initiative. And so you can look at the education, the second pillar there, that's going to relate to our webinar today. And it's about engaging and connecting with you, caregivers, with the intention to provide education on ways you can resource yourself and support yourself as a caregiver. So I always like to give just a little snapshot of what we're going to talk about and hopefully reflect on today. We'll take a moment to do a breathing and mindfulness moment at the start of our time together. Then we'll go into some self-reflection and learning around resiliency, ways to build that resiliency muscle. And we'll close with mindfulness, self-compassion, and then hopefully lots of time kind of embedded throughout a presentation for self-reflection and for discussion. All right. So to bring our whole self, our body and our mind and our spirit into this present moment, I'm going to offer a 3-minute breathing space to support you with getting grounded. So if you're seated, you can uncross your legs. If you're standing, just stand firmly with your feet on the floor. And you can start to settle your eyes closed or gaze down. I want you to have an alert and upright posture. And start to acknowledge your experience. So the thoughts that may be coming into your mind right now, any feelings or body sensations. And take a deep breath in and a slow breath out. Start to direct your full attention to the sensation of breathing in your lower belly. And noting each breath in and each breath out. And use that breath as that anchor to this moment right here that you're in. And start to expand your awareness to your entire body. So from the top of your head down to the bottom of your feet. And bring just a little bit more awareness and attention into your whole body. And then aiming to carry that awareness into the next moment of your day and into the remaining of our time together. So thanks for joining and participating or just being with your breath for a moment. Okay, so caregiving is an issue that affects all Canadians. 1 in 4 Canadians is a caregiver for someone with a long-term health condition, disability, or need related to aging at some point in their lives. And it is estimated that 75% of care is provided by unpaid caregivers. And those caregivers save Canadian healthcare systems billions of dollars per year. Our society simply wouldn't function without caregivers. And the reason I really wanted to start with this statistic is to remind you how incredibly valued and important your role is. And my hope today is to share information, some inspiration, and quite possibly just reminders of ways that you can care for yourself while you're caring for someone else. So the pace and duration of caregiving can look very different for each caregiver. Maybe it starts by dropping by your mom's house and doing her laundry or taking her to a doctor's appointment. Maybe you call your adult daughter who struggles with depression every day to check in on her. But then you find yourself doing the grocery shopping and refilling prescriptions for your mom. Your daughter starts calling you to make her dinner a few times a week. And gradually, you find yourself doing more and more. You may not realize it, but you are making a commitment to care for someone else. Sometimes caregiving is triggered by a major health event or acute diagnosis, such as a serious fall, a motor vehicle accident, stroke, heart attack, or cancer diagnosis. But life as you know it stops, and all your energy goes to caring for the person that is in need, ill. So finding a sustainable caregiver pace is so important, and it's different for everyone. So the important part is to ensure that between those sprints of caregiving, we return to a more balanced way of life. And eventually, we also attend to our basic needs during those sprints. Caregiving is not usually anything any of us anticipate, sign up for, or train for, but it does become the new normal of our life. It can be emotionally and physically demanding, and sometimes downright exhausting. It can also be one of the most rewarding gifts you can give to another person. The point I want to highlight on this slide is that it usually happens when life is already full. And often, caregivers try to squeeze in this role into a very busy schedule without letting something else go. So, caregiving does require us to adjust and modify our schedule. And often, the very things that we need to stay healthy are the things that start to slip away. So, I want to pause just for a moment and reflect on these 4 questions. How is my current self care? How resilient do I feel? What do I need for support? And where do I turn? And these are self reflection questions, but if you are feeling called to share in the chat, you could share your current self care. And it could be that it's just not happening right now, to maybe one small practice that you're feeling proud of. So you're welcome to go ahead and write how your current self-care routine is in the chat box. And I just want to always remind you that this is a place for non-judgment. And often that non-judgment practice needs to be turned inwards, and then lots of heaps of self-compassion. And then also that this isn't a forum for suggestions to other caregivers. This webinar specifically is really just an intent to be able to do a current check-in on your current state. I'm going to turn to the chat box. And we also have our lovely Corinne, who is on our communications, that will be monitoring as well. Yeah, resting when you can. Oh, I love that. I spend a few moments at the beach on your way between caregiving. Gardening. Thank you for sharing that. Morning walk to feel grounded. Daily exercise. Cool. Yes, I just got back into swimming myself. I love that. Kayaking, cycling. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Self-care is just hard for you right now. So getting some ideas. Yes, self-care feelings of just it being inconsistent, which I know many caregivers and myself included can relate to that. It fluctuating, which it does. Creativity, music, yoga. Yeah, attending our webinars. Tennis. Okay, wonderful ideas. For those of you that are like, oh, I just need a little bit of inspiration, turn your eyes to the chat box. There are many really great self-care rituals that are happening. So thank you so much for sharing. Keep going, keep sharing if you're feeling like that would benefit you. Okay, the self-reflection questions that I just shared are a practice that helps to strengthen your self-awareness. So self-awareness is the ability to know your internal state, your preferences, resources, values, and intuition. And a key element to weave in as you reflect is self-compassion and non-judgment. So AKA no shitting on yourself. We all have these, oh, I should do this, I should do this. And we're just having this space of like, this is how it is right now. Self-awareness is the foundation of self-care. It allows you to monitor your inner thoughts, your emotions as they arise. And this can really support you in taking action. Self-care has become a pretty buzzword, and there may be a misconception that self-care means self-indulgence or being selfish. So self-care means taking care of yourself so that you can be healthy. You can do your job, you can help and care for others, and you can do all the things you need and want to do each day. Self-care is part of the answer to how we can better cope with daily stressors. So self-care isn't just a spa treatment, although that can be very lovely. It is about knowing what will comfort you and taking these small steps to try and meet those needs. It's also acknowledging how you're feeling, and particularly identifying those red flags that might be on the road to burnout, and choosing to integrate activities that can create comfort in your life. And so on the slide there just captures some of that. Self-care and resiliency, they're related. So there is a reason I'm starting with outlining self-care and self-reflection, because it's one of the key ways to build resiliency. And it's to focus on taking care of yourself. It helps to keep your mind and body primed to deal with situations that require resilience. A question that you can ask yourself throughout your day, your week: what will support me at this moment? And sometimes it might be a long walk or short walk, or sometimes it's rest. It could be calling a friend or saying no to a social activity. Self-care is not necessarily self-improvement. And I want to say that again, because this was something that was really important for myself to learn. Self-care is not necessarily self-improvement. So activities of self-care can be beneficial. They can have positive effects on your health, on your fitness. But the main goal of self-care are to meet your own needs, to feel better, cared for, or more grounded. I'm going to click through just a few of these strategies that will pop up on your screen. So self-compassion, connection, personal support, resiliency, balance, and action. And I'll walk through what those mean. When I was thinking and researching more about resiliency, I saw that practicing certain strategies added to your resiliency tank. And I've also experienced this in my own life. So resiliency is an accumulation of practicing self-compassion, so being kind to yourself, even when things are not going exactly how you want them to go. Connection with yourself and with others, having a circle of care and personal support, having balance and respite, and then having some action plans to get your needs met as well. And each of these practices could be a presentation in and of itself. And I just want to mention that our organization has lots of materials on each of these topics because we know the importance of each one. So I'll guide you at the end to where some of our resources live, but I just wanted to mention that. Okay, another chance for you to either just reflect on your own, or if you have a piece of paper and you like to jot things down, or if you like to share in the chat box, again, I encourage you to do what makes you feel comfortable, but consider what resiliency means to you. And again, there's no right or wrong answer here. And it's always nice to hear other people's definition of their resilience. Thank you. Not to flip out. Forgiving self and moving forward. Gratitude to what I've helped. A gratitude practice. Yeah. Being able to keep going, maybe even against the current. Oh, I love that, Valerie. Thank you. The ability to get back to something after a challenge or crisis. Yeah, being able to turn your mind off when you're going to rest, staying attuned to your values, flexible in the mind. Yeah, lots of great, letting it out, crying, releasing that energy and moving on. Oh, I appreciate that. Reframing things with a more positive, maybe perspective, or maybe just a little bit more hope. Adjusting expectations, staying present in the moment. Wonderful. I love each of your personal definitions, feeling grounded. Thank you. Please continue to write down either on your own notepad or within the chat box. I always feel like caregivers, well, anyone that's participating can really learn from the people in our group. So thank you. Okay. I think that the most important thing to remember is that resiliency is a skill set. It is something we learn and we practice in order to get better at it. And for me, this is a big relief because some days it feels like I'm doing great and I've got this. And while other times it's much more challenging. And I'll just mention I'm a new mom. And so resiliency has been, and trying to flex that resiliency muscle is a continual practice. So it's important to remember that baked into this experience of being a human, that we're going to face suffering and hardship, and it's not going to go smoothly all the time. And I really feel, and I hear from caregivers, that the caregiving journey highlights this. However, when we feel mentally and physically healthy, we're able to grow from our challenges and experiences. And I know many of you just mentioned that in the chat, that you're able to bounce forward. So please pause and consider these questions. So again, on the screen here, and see if you can also incorporate that self-compassion and non-judgment when you're answering. And I'll just say, you don't need to share in the forum for these, but just making some mental notes of your current resiliency level. So how do you adapt in a healthy way to stress? What is your ability to recover or bounce back or forward from a difficult situation? What is your capacity to grow from an experience or bounce forward? And again, as we ask these questions, we know that different situations are more challenging for sure. And so that's where this level of having compassion and perspective is so important. I'm just pausing for you just to reflect and note, not feel rushed. So a few final points about the how-to with building that resiliency muscle. I just want to mention, when I teach mindfulness, often some of the things that come up is that, like, I can't turn my mind off. And I can't, I can't do this mindfulness practice. It's very challenging, which being present in the moment is very challenging. And so I always think about this, where when you're sitting and trying to get present and your mind goes off to a thought, that the moment that you come back to your body, to your breath, maybe as an anchor point, or just like a feeling, that flex of coming back to yourself, that is mindfulness. And so, that resiliency, when we go off and we feel not so resilient, and maybe we react or respond in a way we're not very proud of, or we eat a bag of chips because that is what we feel like and it will soothe our emotional state, that the moment that we come back to maybe the strengthening of our resilience, or like, okay, I'm going to go for that walk, or I'm going to call that friend, or I'm going to focus on my breathing, that's how we start to strengthen that muscle. And so just that reminder that we all go off in thought. We all go off on different tangents, right? And some of them might not be as healthy as others, but that process of coming back to yourself, that is the weightlifting. That's the strengthening of the resiliency muscle. So cultivating a positive outlook is this first step in our resiliency factor. And it means accepting the imperfections of caregiving and not staying too long with negative thoughts. So the best you can, choosing to have a positive outlook, which can be really challenging, and we know this. And I'll just also know that it's a continual practice. It's not one and done, and it's happening all the time. And sometimes we mess up. It's also reframing stressful situations, even taking a pause or space to help alter how you might be perceiving something or a situation. And I know for myself, when I'm activated and my body feels really activated and my mind's chattering, going for a walk or putting in some a podcast or music or calling a trusted friend can really help to reframe things. And so often it's just thinking of these strategies before we might be in a stressful situation that can be really helpful. Creating a network of support. So caregiving, we know it cannot be done alone. You will need your friends and family and community support. And caregivers support groups are something that we know, and research has shown, is so incredibly supportive for caregivers to feel seen and heard. And so I just want to insert here too that, coming to a webinar and sharing and even just listening and being part of a bigger group can feel like a warm hug. And so we also have many caregiver support groups that we offer through the month that we welcome you to sign up and to also get that support. And then the last one, that nurturing of yourself, that this self-compassion and kindness to yourself is so very important. Staying in the present moment, also, making friends with reality. A lot of the time, our internal struggles heighten what we want things to be different than what they actually are right now. So returning to the present experience can be very helpful. Your values and core beliefs are very important to remember in your caregiving for someone else. And I feel like this comes up a lot in discussion. It's just remembering your why. So you're so valuable and your role is so very meaningful. And sometimes in the messiness of caregiving, in the struggles, in the complete exhaustion, we can lose sight of our why. And so, often caregivers have like sticky notes, maybe it's a few values, just returning to that to remind yourself of your own why. And then also prioritizing your well-being, your physical and mental is so important. So that movement is so important. It improves your mood, your sleep, your cognition, emotional responses, and immunity. And I know in the self-care, in that chat box, a lot of people are incorporating movement, and there's so much research and data around how it can benefit. It's that prescription for stress and anxiety. And I know during the pandemic, doctors were actually writing out RXs to go outside and to move. And so just that reminder of how incredibly important your well-being is and movement. Okay, just going to check the chat box for a moment. Oh, yes, some questions about the slides. Yes, we're going to send out the slides after with some resources. So thanks for asking. Oh, yes, be calm. Yes, mindful meditations. And they're actually they're guided groups as well. Lots of meditation apps that are there for you. Thank you for sharing your insights in the chat box. Oh, The Untethered Soul, one of my favorite books. Thank you for sharing. Okay, this is kind of the last chunk of our resiliency, and then we'll go into self-compassion. So these are some dimensions of resiliency. So we have physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And I'm going to highlight two of them in the next few slides, but I'll also send out some resources like for all encompassing the dimensions of resiliency that you're seeing on the slide right now. So physical resiliency. So how does resiliency work? What does it look like? How does it feel? So physical resiliency is feeling physically strong in your body, good stamina during the day. You're able to keep up with these physical aspects of caregiving, and you have the energy to be active in whatever shape or form that looks like. Emotional resiliency. So again, a lot of these things that we're talking about, which is perspective, having a positive outlook, self-regulating, when things are more, there might be conflict in a relationship or internal conflict, remaining flexible. And I saw that a lot. This mental flexibility is so important, and able to have perspective and see the bigger picture. So with those two, so the physical, feeling kind of strong in your body and able to keep up with the demands of caregiving, and then the emotional, being able to have some perspective, that bounce forward, openness, self resiliency, and stamina. I want you just to take a moment, and again, this can be chat box or personal, you get to choose. What makes emotional and physical resiliency challenging? Because we all know that it is a challenge. And so sometimes just voicing this is why it's challenging in my life can feel quite freeing. And then how resilient are you feeling right now? And that could be in any one of the domains. It could be a holistic, I'm feeling pretty good. So maybe 1 is low to 10 feeling pretty good. And again, this is day to day, sometimes minute to minute. But let's say right now during this presentation and reflecting how you're feeling in your resiliency tank. If you're feeling called to share in the chat, again, no judgment, having lots of self-compassion here. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, summer months, feeling a little bit more resilient. Yeah, it's interesting how our energy really does start to kind of reflect seasons. So we have a little bit more sunlight, a little bit more energy. Yeah, lack of support right now from family. So that can be making things feel a little bit more burdensome. So that I understand that. We hear that a lot. It can be very challenging. Yes, feeling that maybe that ability to not feel conflict when someone's pushing your buttons. So maybe the resiliency can go to a certain extent and then taper off when you've hit your edge. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So some people just feeling tired and like not a lot of energy and maybe not a lot of support. So just acknowledging and hearing that. Thank you for sharing. And then others feeling a little bit more creative and feeling resilient and maybe more engaged with that. I'm going to read them all, but I just want to know that I'm reading. Oh, I'm going to end on this one because I feel like this is really important. Is that sometimes your resiliency is affected by by those that either value your role or don't value your role. And that is actually an interesting concept, right? That when you feel seen, you feel heard, and you feel respected, that your resiliency cup starts to kind of increase because you're like, okay, they see that I'm putting in this work and time and effort. And then sometimes another perspective is that, when I'm not getting this, it actually pours out. And I feel like you're not seeing me, hearing me, and you're not seeing all the efforts. And I feel like that is common. And so, not that I have an answer to that in any way, but like building that personal kind of like acknowledgement and self-compassion and like cheerleading. Not that it will take that all the way, but just acknowledging that you're doing a really good job. I'll just share something personally. I feel like as a new mom, and I remember in my early days just feeling absolutely exhausted, very anxious, and I remember my doctor specifically saying, "Just get out and go and walk. Just like go and move your body." And I remember being slightly infuriated by someone suggesting that because they didn't understand that I had no sleep and no energy. However, it was something that I continued to do. I just tried to get outside. And I actually started just to take pictures of flowers or birds I saw, just to give myself some kind of joyful moment. And I will say that that really, although I was still tired and I still needed rest and respite, that it did help to slowly shift kind of the momentum in more of in a positive way. And so that's just my own personal experience with some stress and anxiety and feeling overwhelmed. And so, and also I know many of you have been in touch with our caregiver support line, sometimes talking to someone that really does understand. Maybe that's a therapist, a counselor, or a really good friend that you can trust. Yeah, thanks, Pat. Exercise is so helpful. Okay, so just to make sure that we fit in, and I just want you to know I value all of your comments and I'm reading them. I want to ensure that we finish with self-compassion. And self-compassion, as I've wove it in through our presentation today, is just such an important piece of resilience. So self-compassion mindfulness is a method and research by Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Chris Germer. And it's been an interesting practice for myself. I went through the mindfulness self-compassion training, and it was probably one of the most challenging practices and enlightening practices because it really required me to notice areas of self-talk or striving that weren't really compassionate and really actually sometimes internally mean or not validating. And so this practice really has taught me, and I know the aim in terms of learning about it, it teaches you to become an inner ally instead of an inner enemy. And just a reminder, I'll send the slides out. I'm going to click through the next one. So before I let you know why self-compassion is incredibly important for caregivers and for people in general, I want to address first the misconceptions or the misgivings about whether it's a good idea to be self-compassionate or if we can be too self-compassionate. And I mention this because often I feel in our Western culture, we don't promote self-compassion as a virtue, and many people harbor this kind of suspicion about being too kind to yourself. So maybe just take a moment and consider any misgivings that you might personally have about self-compassion. So it could be a fear or concern that you might have as a possible downside. I'll just state what mine were when I was going through this process. So sometimes it feels self-indulgent, or I feel like if I'm too nice to myself, I might get lazy. Sometimes it might be perceived as being selfish, or people will judge me if I'm nice to myself. So those were just my own personal, like, this is great, but what's the catch? And so you might just, consider mentally what comes up for you. So a large body of research shows that common misgivings about self-compassion are misconceptions, which means they are generally unfounded. So self-compassion, so I'll just go through some of the misconceptions and then I'll dive into why it's so important to be kind to yourself. So self-compassion is just a form of self-pity. That's a common misconception. However, self-compassion is the antidote to self-pity. So while self-pity sounds like, oh, poor me, self-compassion recognizes that life is hard for everyone, and that research shows that self-compassionate people are more likely to engage in perspective taking rather than focusing on their own distress. Self-compassion will make me weak and vulnerable. So again, another misgiving. And however, self-compassion is a reliable source of inner strength and courage, and it enhances resiliency when we're faced with those difficult situations. Research shows that self-compassionate people are better able to cope with tough situations like divorce or trauma or chronic pain. Self-compassion is self-centered, and I should focus on being compassionate to others. And that's another common misgiving. So giving compassion to ourselves actually enables us to give more to other relationships. Research has shown that passionate people tend to be more caring and supportive in relationships and compromise in relationship conflicts. So self-compassion is so very crucial for caregivers, not only because it helps us forgive ourselves for our mistakes that we will make, but it also makes it, it also allows us to acknowledge and comfort ourselves in the difficulty of caregiving. So self-compassion leads to increased feelings of happiness, optimism, gratitude. It's linked to better coping and resiliency in the face of demanding life situations, like caring for someone else. For caregivers specifically, it's shown to lead to more satisfaction in caring for someone and decreases that chance of burnout. And this doesn't mean you won't face challenges, but you will meet these challenges with hopefully a little bit more empathy. So, sometimes it might sound like this is hard right now. It's only natural that I'm feeling stressed or anxious or sad. And so the three parts that we talk about in self-compassion is self-kindness, this common humanity piece, and mindfulness. So self-compassion is when we make a mistake or we fail in some way, and we are more likely to beat ourselves up than put a supportive arm around our own shoulder. Self-kindness counters this tendency so that we are as caring to ourselves as we are towards others. Rather than being harshly critical when noticing personal shortcomings, we are supportive and encouraging and aim to protect ourselves from harm. So the first step to self-kindness is acknowledging your pain or suffering. And it can sound like, well, I can provide a certain level of care. I can't do everything by myself. All people have limitations. And then the second piece is this common humanity. And I recently read this quote by Brené Brown, who's a researcher and author. And she quotes, "Imperfections are not inadequacies. They are reminders that we are all in this together." So a sense of interconnectedness is central to self-compassion. It's recognized that all humans are flawed, we're works in progress, and that everyone fails, makes mistakes, and experiences hardship in life. So self-compassion honors the unavoidable fact that life entails suffering, and for everyone without exception. So the pain I feel in difficult times is the same pain that you feel in difficult times. And the circumstances may be very different, but the degree of pain might be different, but the basic experience of human suffering is the same. And so it might sound like something like, I am human, I am fallible, and I'm going to make mistakes like everyone else. This is difficult, and anyone would be struggling with this. And then the last piece that we'll finish on is mindfulness. So this involves the awareness of moment to moment experiences in a clear and balanced manner. So it means being open to reality of the present moment, allowing thoughts, emotions, and sensations to enter in without resistance. And this part, mindfulness of the self-compassion practice, is so important because we need to be able to turn inward and acknowledge when we might be suffering, and to be with our own pain just long enough to respond with care and kindness. So you stay and you recognize your sensations and your thoughts. You try not to stay too long with those negative thoughts. The key, the key to well-being is to acknowledge and return. So a reminder that a belief is just a thought that you continue to think. And for the last moment, if you need to log off, by all means, thank you for coming. But I'm going to take a moment to finish with the self-compassion. It's called affectionate breathing. So I want you to take a moment and to find a posture in which your body is feeling comfortable and feeling supported for the length of this mindfulness practice. You can let your eyes gently close or partially, and take a few slow, easy breaths, releasing any unnecessary tension. And if you like, you might start to bring a hand to your heart or another soothing place as a reminder that we're bringing your awareness inward, and that affectionate awareness to your breathing and to yourself, because you are so important. And you might leave your hand there or place it down at any point. But begin to notice your breathing in your body, feeling your body breathe in and feeling your body breathe out. Notice how your body is nourished on the breath in, and a slight relaxation with the breath out. Just noticing if you can let your body breathe you. There's nothing to do. Just a moment here with your breath. And starting to notice the rhythm of your breathing, the flowing in and out. And taking some time to feel that natural rhythm of your breath. Your mind will naturally wander like a curious child or a little puppy. And when that happens, just gently return to that rhythm of your breathing. If it feels okay and safe in your body, you can start to just give yourself over to that breath, letting your breathing be all there is. Just breathing here, being with your breath, and noticing anything that might come up. And now gently release your attention of your breath sitting quietly in your own experience and allowing yourself to feel whatever you're feeling, just be as you are. You might choose to open your eyes or lift your eyes back up. And again, in closing, I'll offer a few questions, and you again can chat in the box, or you can just reflect internally. So, what did I notice? And it might be noticing in our breathing moments at the start and the finish of our time together, or through the reflection. What did I notice today? What did I feel? And how am I feeling right now? And so, in closing our time together, you're welcome to share your experience. Going to click forward just so you know that in the next day, you'll be getting some resources. So, the PowerPoint, you'll get the webinar recording here and any resources that we have. I'll also remind you that I'm going to send out a survey. I always am so very appreciative of any feedback of this presentation, also feedback of any resources, topics that you feel would be supportive in your caregiving journey right now. Our website is on the screen, and we'll also send that out if you haven't explored our resources, and also our caregiver support line. I'm just going to click forward. So it's Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4 p.m. We offer emotional one-on-one support, navigating different topics like healthcare. We have support groups. We have lots of newsletters and articles that we have in our organization. And so I'm just going to check over to the chat box so I can see all the things that are coming in. Thank you for all of your wonderful insights. Thank you for your encouraging words, and also for feeling maybe just a bit more relaxed and learning maybe a few new things. And hopefully the learning is just internal. And you're so very welcome. Oh, yes. Thank you, Stacy. There is a new support group in our Facebook community. I'll link that in the email that goes out to you. And that is like a peer-to-peer support. And so you can offer, so some of these things, these chats that we're having, resources, suggestions, it's monitored by our team. And so again, that non-judgment, no bullying, very safe environment. And so if that's something that you feel like would be a really good resource for you, I'll also connect that into the follow-up email. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I am so appreciative of you making the time today, and I look forward to spending more time with you in the future. We have lots of webinars, and actually I'll let you know that we have a webinar happening in August, and I'll put that in the follow-up email because I think it's the 19th, but I don't want to say the wrong date. So it's all about managing those challenging thoughts and some strategies, and that's with a clinical counselor that will be coming in to present on that. And we're really excited to have Emma in to talk about managing those stressful thoughts that come up. And so we'll close together now. Thank you. And until we see each other again, please stay healthy, stay well. And for self-care, this hopefully fulfilled your maybe self-care practice today. And maybe if you have another moment of time, you can go and get some movement in, or eat a nourishing meal, or have a nice big cup of water. Okay, so thank you. Bye.